Hey there, friends. This is Dr. Bill with Common Sense Math. This is going to be a sixth grade problem with an emphasis on mode most often. And you have to pay attention if they're asking for a number that appears the most often, or if they're asking for a specific event or idea or concept that appeared most often. And then another one, the other reason that this question did so poorly is if the students don't pay attention on these inline drop-down choices, are they asking for a number, a fraction, a decimal, or a percent? So this was a two-part question, two inline drop-down choices worth 2 points. And I can tell that the reason that the students got 20% was they didn't understand what type of mode was being asked about in part one, and they didn't understand how to go from a number to a fraction to a decimal to a percent. And my mathematics charts allow you to do that. And what I've also done, instead of just giving you the sixth grade test, each time that I work on a question for you, I'm going to give you an updated version of the test where I kind of show you on the previous page how I solved it, so you can use my idea or you can use yours. So let me get right into it so that we can take a look. I do want to apologize for losing touch for a little while. In case you hadn't seen it, the reason I've disappeared off the map, if you're not following my Facebook, is I got injured severely in a New Year's Eve event with my family where I was playing a game, took my turn, stood up to lean forward, and my son went to the restroom, moved my chair without telling me, and then I fell 4 feet to the floor and busted my tailbone in 2 to 3 places, according to my doctor, and who knows how many uh, months I'm going to be out. I was told it could be 3 to 4, but some of you who are my friends or in the groups have been telling me it could be 9 months or even more. What I've already done with one of you, the ones from close to the Houston area, we're going to get together and do some live um, Zoom sessions with a couple of hours from each grade level. Now, I do have two main cities left. If you're uh, from the Dallas area or from the Lubbock area, I'm going to probably do those trainings at the campus slash district who had the most teachers sign up, and that would be Slayton for the Lubbock people and Grand Prairie for the Dallas people. So uh, go ahead and get with me. I'm hoping to be able to heal enough to go to you in person. Uh, the Lubbock people, my training with you guys not till March, and several of you have never even seen me before. So I'm going to suggest that maybe we do that training either a little earlier in person. I can pick a different Saturday if you'd like. That way we can not have to wait all the way till March. I'm hoping that with enough of these recorded trainings, you'll kind of get the hang of a lot of my strategies and the way to do them. So let's go ahead without further ado. Let's go ahead and take a look at a way that I recommend that you solve. This question is going to be the way it is in the PDF file that you received in this email. It's going to be sixth grade question number 1 On page 3 is where it's written for your students to choose from. Okay, as you can see, it was an inline choice question, the one that was like it, but it only 20% of the students were able to get the first point and the second point correct. And I'll show you the reasoning behind it. So they had to basically convert a table, like some of you might call it a T-chart, and be able to uh, come up with the data based on the table. So let's see what happened here. So what I did, I went ahead and switched where I copied and pasted the same data over uh, to the page before so that you'll see this already highlighted for you so that you can kind of use it as a guide. It was inline choice worth 2 points. Only 20% was able to get both parts correct. So let's see what went wrong. So we got some data, 4 different events, and the number of participants who chose each of these events on a cruise ship. Okay. Now, uh, it says to use the data to complete the statement. So it's sort of like a fill in the blank, except it's dropped down where they give you 4 choices for each one, and then you have to just pick the right one. So let's look and see how the first one was worded. The event singular, and on the answer choice, it said event or events or the selection or selections. And that's where it threw off your kids. That represents the mode of the data. So normally mode is the number that's repeated the most. But whenever it says the event that represents the mode, the event that is repeated the most, the one I want you to think of your kids interpreting that as the event that was chosen the most. And so when you look at this first one here that says fishing and snorkeling, you see fishing has 20 participants and snorkeling has 20 participants. Well, that number is there the most, but because they weren't asking it like that, as which number appears the most, it's basically the event that the most people chose. It would be swimming because that number would have uh, swimming would have a higher number of people who chose it. And so the distractor in this case was going to be the number, just the number that appeared most. And they asked about the event. So that's where most of your kids went wrong. And the second one, because the question, even though it's not a question mark, is asking for percent, not a number, your students didn't know how to go through the steps to get 2%. So they said fishing or snorkeling. And then because they asked for percent, the answers are in percent. So let me show you what I did below to kind of make a picture, because a picture paints a better idea of what they're asking. So when you're trying to do percent, you've got to understand it all starts as a fraction. So it's part to whole. So when you look, I drew a picture for you. So they said fishing, and you look up there on the top, 20 chose fishing. And they said, or snorkeling. It was really hard for me to find a picture of snorkeling where the guy is actually having the snorkel a little bit above the water so that he can actually be breathing while he was doing it. Most of the other pictures were below the water. So part is because it's either or, that means if I'm doing one of these or the other, that counts as part of my total. So 20 and 20 is 40 out of 80. Well, that's the fraction. So what most of the students probably did in Texas, they right away said, okay, well, I'm just going to add up the two numbers. So it was 40. No, it was 40 out of 80. So step 2, those kids had to realize I have to take a fraction and turn it to a decimal. And they could either take 40 divided by 80 and divide, or 4 divided by 8 and divide, and they would end up getting 0 and 50 hundredths, or 0 and 5/10, either way. I'll show you that in a second. But then they said they had to say, okay, well, with percent, how much is 50 hundredths in percent? Just move the decimal 2 places to the right. Now, this is where I feel like my mathematics charts and my tools come in pretty handy. Okay. First, I want to show you what they were asking about. Part 1, there is the part 1 data. They said which event was there the most. Well, the most people chose swimming as their event. Okay. Part 2, 40 out of 80 is the fraction. And then to move in the place value chart from fraction to a decimal, we divide. And so we would either get 0 and 5/10 or 0 and 50 hundredths. So if they asked for a decimal, we could look for that answer. Well, because they didn't ask for that, they asked for percent, I've got to move 2 places to the right. And so if you decide to go ahead and go with 5/10, you still have to move the decimal 1, 2 places. That would be 50% and 50 hundredths, 0 and 50 hundredths. I move the decimal 2 places, 1, 2. It's still 50%. And so the answer, if the students would have gone from fraction to decimal to percent, would have been 50%. And so the answer to part B is this drop-down choice. And they would click on it when it drops down, submit it, and the answer to part A, the event that was chosen the most, you can see here, was swimming. So that would be the one that they would click on the drop down choices. And so very tricky, distracting, kind of the kids are not paying attention to what's actually being asked for. You can't give me a number, which would have been 40. You can't give me a fraction, which would have been 40 out of 80 or 4/8. You can't give me a decimal, 50 hundredths or 5/10. You have to give me what they ask for, 50%. So that's, again, not the way, but I hope that the place value chart and the want to show you one more thing that I think is going to help. When you go to the keywords chart, if you look at here, mode, the number repeated the most in a list. Well, because they didn't ask for just the number, they said which event is repeated the most. Well, the most people chose, what was it? Swimming. And so that's what your kids have to be careful about. What are they asking for? Is it just the number only, or is it the event? And because of that distractor. So here's the second part. When it comes to division, a proper fraction has a larger number on the bottom. And so your kids had to first figure out, how do I get the part to the whole? Then to go from the fraction to the decimal, you take the numerator divided by the denominator, the 4 divided by the 8. Then to go from decimal to percent, you move the decimal 2 units to the right, like I showed you in the place value chart, and add the percent sign, the same as multiplying the decimal times 100. Okay, and so that's all in the division part of my place value chart. I'll take a picture of all these and include them in my email to you. But that's, again, some helpful ways to solve a difficult problem like this. As you can see, if it's 20% in sixth grade, it probably would be doing pretty poorly in seventh, eighth, and even ninth grade as well. So that's why I'm saying that you should probably practice several of these, because I chose the in every grade level, the 10 worst or more problems in terms of understanding or comprehension. And in third grade, because it's the very foundation, I chose, I think it was the lowest 17 questions instead. So there you have that. Mode, and then going from a number to a fraction to a percent to a decimal. Uh, Good luck, God bless, and we'll see you guys on the next video, which will be for seventh grade.